My name is Gene Sweppy. I'm a retiree from Procter & Gamble in the Research and Development Department. And I obviously support the preservation of the house, or I wouldn't be here this evening. But my question is more about learning what the process was that started the decision to raise the house. And I wonder if the Green Acres could make any information available on how this process began. Are there records, are there meetings available to the public so we can see what happened and when the decision was made, and whether was it unanimous? Did Mrs. Nippert participate in the decision? I think these are all things that would be very interesting and helpful to decide how we should proceed. I guess a little personal thing in closing. Mr. Gamble knew my father very well. My father had morning paper routes, Enquirer and others, in Westwood, and I suppose Gamble got up early in the morning and my dad was delivering the papers, and they often talked. And to tell you what kind of man he was, he told my father, "Art, you should build a house." And my dad said, "I don't have any property." He said, "Well, you take the property on Montclair and you pay me when you can." So that tells you something about the character of James N. Gamble. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
My name is Joe Ross. My wife Rita spoke earlier. We've been living in our home, which is maybe a quarter mile away, certainly in the neighborhood, for 22 years. I came about the realization of the Gamble house while I was in college at the University of Cincinnati. Mr. Gamble's grandson is James Gamble Nippert, for whom the football stadium was built, and also the fraternity house in which I lived for several years. And part of our fraternity's charter is that we act as true gentlemen. The previous speaker asked for records and communications with Green Acres. And I think he brought up a point that I want to make. We've not been dealing with true gentlemen. What we've been getting from Green Acres are lies as to offers they've received from the Historical Foundation to purchase the home, to maintain it going forward. They put it out in public, absolute lies about how we feel about it. They make it seem as if the community does not care. Why do we want these people as our neighbors? It's a beautiful home. It certainly has as much history as any building you can name in the city. I don't have to say that when you go anywhere outside of the city, anywhere in the world, you mentioned you're from Cincinnati, somebody inevitably will mention Procter & Gamble. To lose this home, to disrespect Mr. Gamble in this way, would be criminal. Thank you.
If I was the Pope, fat chance, but if I was the Pope, I would create a type of saint called civic saint. A civic saint is somebody who devotes his or her life to the improvement of planet Earth or the universe, whatever comes first. And obviously, James Gamble is in that category. Now, how are we going to teach our children about him if there is nothing left of him on this earth? The fact is, you cannot teach the present unless you connect it with the past. We all have studied enough history to understand that. That's why it's very important to keep this, to preserve the building in order to preserve the spirit of James Gamble. And if children are able to stroll around in that house and have a wonderfully educational approach so they understand how this person grew up and helped his community, then they will also understand the importance of taking care of the rest of the land there and the environmental aspects of nature. So we really need to keep those two things together for it to be a very successful endeavor. Thank you.
Thank you for coming, and I especially want to express my gratitude to everyone here who's spoken so eloquently this evening. Fred took some of the steam out of what I wanted to say to you, because I too toured the house 2 years ago as a board member of the Westwood Historical Society, and I was absolutely amazed at how warm and livable this house was. This is a family house. This is not a grand estate in Indian Hill. And it was obviously constructed to be a family house. When you walked through the house, these were bedrooms you could see your kids sleeping in. This was the size of, these rooms were the size of your rooms. They were not grand. This is not speaking to massive wealth. This is a house that speaks to a man who understood who he was and who felt very comfortable in that place.
Keep going.
I got a minute. I'm a resident of Westwood. I'm a historian by training. I'm a former member of the Historic Conservation Board of the City of Cincinnati. But really, it was that tour of the house that convinced me that this was truly a special, special house, and I hope it will be preserved.
And I've lived in Westwood all of my life. I went to Walnut Hills High School, and for over 4 years I rode the Metro to and from past the Gamble house every day. And even in that short period of time, I noticed that the property became more dilapidated and it was harder to see from the road, it being overgrown. It was always a building that my mom told me that I should appreciate for its architecture and its beauty and its historical significance. So given its historic landmark status, the way that it's being let to disintegrate is against the law. And you as council members, your job is to, as appropriately as you can, try to uphold the law. And by doing that, by trying to establish eminent domain for this house, you would be doing that in the most significant way that you could. I would like to close by saying that I ask that you make a decision that gives me the opportunity to have the same amount of pride in my community and in my neighborhood that I grew up in as the ones that I went to high school with at Walnut Hills High School. And I hope that this house will be around someday so that I can bring my daughter or my children to see it and appreciate its history.
I've been a resident for 24 years. I live across the street from the Gamble estate. I'm going to get through this without crying. Been privileged to be in the neighborhood with it. Walked 5 children past the Gamble estate for the last 24 years. I actually started letter writing in 1997. I was prompted by my father, and I'm not sure why that date, why I thought it was declining at that point. I don't remember. I actually wrote it to P&G, didn't know anything about Mrs. Nippert or Green Acres. Got a very nice response from Procter & Gamble about saying, you know, it's out of our hands, blah, 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 very generic letter. Got my letters here. And in 2004, I was walking by the house and I saw movers there, and I panicked and I thought, oh my gosh, it's coming down, it's coming down. I ran up to the movers and they said, oh no, the roof is leaking. We're moving all the furniture to the Fleischman estate because the roof is leaking. And I said, oh my gosh, well, why can't they fix it? So I befriended both caretakers over these 24 years, which Cecil Harry does deserve some credit. He was the caretaker for 30 years. Very endeared to the property, loved to share stories about the property. But anyway, I didn't sleep the night that it rained, 2 nights after I saw the movers, because I thought, oh my gosh, the roof is leaking, it's damaging the inside of the house. My husband said, give it up. So I hand wrote a letter, delivered it to the attorney and the movers, and they said, you have to hand deliver this to Green Acres. I drove to Indian Hill, hand delivered several handwritten letters to Indian Hill, pleading with Mrs. Nippert and Carter to please preserve the house. We'll roof it. We'll put the tar paper up. Didn't ask for money, didn't ask for labor. We as Westwood would supply the materials if you will let us just preserve it till you decide the state of what it's going to be determined, what's ever going to happen with it. Was denied that, just very generic letters back. Never asked for money. We were willing as Westwood to jump in at any point to do the preservation, and we've been turned down. So I just think it deserves to be preserved. I think we all feel the same way, and thank you for your time.
Thank you.
I just want to say I moved here almost 5 years ago from Denver, Colorado. I am totally in love with all the architecture in this city, and we had considered moving. I met my husband and moved here. He's a resident all of his life of Cincinnati. We were thinking of moving to the country, and the longer we looked for a house, the more I love the architecture here in Westwood. We bought a house, it's a 100-year-old house, took us more than a year of rehabbing it to be able to move and live into it. People are doing this all the time. They want to preserve this area, they want to preserve this neighborhood. We have fabulous neighbors, and I just want to say, coming from another place, I'm appalled at even the notion that people would want to tear down something as magnificent as this country's history and the representation of the Gamble estate. I'm so proud to live here now, to have my family and friends come and visit, and to have something as close as the Gamble estate in my backyard to take them to would just be the icing on the cake. So please, I appreciate everyone being here, and I thank you for all the hard work in trying to preserve it. Thank you.
You know, I had a bunch of things I was going to say. I'm prepared. I've got all kinds of testimony, pages, chapters from the community, letters, emails, phone calls. I think just looking at this room tells you everything you need to know about how important this house is to this community and to this city. They've already said everything I could say more eloquently than I can, but you know, the James N. Gamble House is the spiritual center of Westwood. The residents of Westwood are bound to that house. All these good people that you see here that fight so hard for their neighborhood, the good guy loitering crew, the citizens on patrol, the people who take trash bags to pick up garbage off the streets when they go by. Everything you see in this room is the embodiment of what James N. Gamble wanted for Cincinnati. And I'll just say that the restoration, preservation, and promotion of the house and James N. Gamble's life work would be far more beneficial to the community of Westwood and the city of Cincinnati than a locked gate private park managed by those with no association or understanding of our village history. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.